Last time we stopped in the middle, we're just gonna pick up where we left off. I'm wondering how the big supernatural hound is gonna come into this. I presume it has to somewhere, doesn't it? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense. What is your position now? The court awaits a response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. This isn't the dead end it seemed to be. The answer is right in front of me. Literally. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well. The defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is possible. Well, it is possible, my lord. What? How could you? Do you think I want to believe it? The fact is, I can't say with complete certainty what actually happened because I wasn't there. Well, that's really creative. You disappoint me, Ryanosuke. If I may, Mr. Naruhodo, I think perhaps that's why we form opinions based on evidence. Ah, so true. And actually, we have evidence that can settle this argument conclusively. My lord, the defense would like to present evidence to support... Before you plow on feigned ignorance of what just occurred, counsel, feigning ignorance of what just occurred, counsel, you must be penalized for that short but embarrassing "ah" you uttered a moment ago. Are you saying I chose the wrong answer? That is very disappointing. Because I thought Kazuma did it from the start. Phooey. What? Just phooey. I really thought I could just rush past it if I was quick enough. The game just punched me in the face. Never mind the penalty, Mr. Naruhodo. The truth is all that matters. Yeah, except I only get 5 of them. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claim that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime. What? The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So, present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? Well, I didn't think this was even a thing, so now I have to figure out which piece of evidence demonstrates it. It's been a couple days since I've done this, so I'm not very in the... Okay, Telegraph Japan. This doesn't show that it's impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to have been involved, right? Piece of the pocket watch. It shows that Gregson was indeed there, but doesn't really show anything about Asogi. The evacuation drill. Asogi, if Gregson could have been there, then Kazuma could have also been outside the door. didn't embed a tip of this into the... We still haven't established how that happened. How did Kazuma embed the tip of his sword into Gregson's chest? Like, as in his... Like, the chest you hold in your hand, not his, like, part of his body, his chest. You know what I meant. Passport. Oh, this is not a problem. Nope. The gun? I can eliminate some of these, excuse me. So, this... Nothing to do with it, right? So we can rule this out. It's definitely not the Red-Headed League article. Definitely not this. Not this. Not this. Not that. So those 5 definitely... I can't imagine how those could possibly be proof that Prosecutor Sogi was not involved. Okay? The gun... If I can't think of anything else to present, it's something that could possibly have to do with it. Because apparently... So, maybe we could say Kazuma didn't have a gun. The thing is, though, that gun... It showed up in that rented room, which is somewhat far away. From the scene of the crime, and I always thought that Kazuma just took Gregson's gun somehow, right? No. 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 Shot at point blank range. You could argue that this is it because the person who killed Gregson shot him with a gun. But the thing is, though, Shishiro would have, if Shishiro did it, he would have had to have shot with a gun too, right? So the gun doesn't mean anything then. No. No, that's in the room. We're in the room. No. 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 It's either the autopsy report or the gun. The gun is the thing we haven't presented yet. That's the only my two prime candidates.
Take that!
Well, that's obviously wrong. Making the evidence weep here, Ranosuke Naruhodo. Sorry? Every piece of evidence has a role to play in arriving at the truth. They are not playthings you could toss around the courtroom for entertainment. Okay, so we know the member of the crew was on sentry duty. We know a member of the crew was on sentry duty outside the first-class cabins nearly all of the time, except for the evacuation drill. So as long as the guard was there, it would have been impossible to fire a shot without being heard. And that very much narrows down when the crime could have been committed. Fine. Fine, I'll present the evacuation drill again. Fine.
Take that!
The itinerary for crew members on the SS Grouse, my lord. This is conclusive proof. An itinerary? How does that prove anything? Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledge that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come in to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock, as indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Ah. Yeah, but we'd have to show that Kazuma was really telling the truth when he said he spent the night in Dunkirk. Like, I didn't believe him when he said that. I thought he was making that up. Now, clearly the murder could only have been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. Yeah, I just thought Kazuma was just totally making that up, so I disregarded it. I didn't actually think that we should argue based off of that. Prosecutor Asogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. And I spent that night in a boarding house in the town and returned to England the following morning. And you just took that at face value. I did not take that at face value at all. I was just like, nope. Oh well. Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof. I don't. That Kazuma Asogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. Fooey on you! No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. What do you mean? The boy's just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left the cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and... No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. As I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. An extremely easy to verify and undeniable proof. If you say so, sir. No, There's no escape this time. How convenient. Anyway, you can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer as a common man. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it? Seishiro Jigoku! It was that damn trial 10 years ago. Get it back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. It's over. My life is over. That's when all this began, okay. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan. A Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that you decide to recruit Mr. Asogi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain. And you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement. Because I was already on my way to Britain at that time as in Kazuma's place. And that left me with only one option to carry out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself, personally. Even though Kazuma theoretically still could, which makes this plot really lame and uninteresting. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume. That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain. So I enlisted the help of my British counterpart. And made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. What? The Reaper? There's only one person who could have done that. Mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. Ah. So that means that the assassin exchange was planned by the Reaper? I am not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. We know who he is though. Unless the game punches me in the face again. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France. And his own death. Oh, how awful. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time, waiting. For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock, I had intended to finish him by strangulation. Moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came around and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received a British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse, which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street. Yeah, that's why I thought Kazuma would have done it, because he's the one who has motivation to do that. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hyuk Boon, from whom he would take back his police identification. Ah. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit. This is so lame. So I took the Hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been after he took this photograph with you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? The red wig. For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece of his own in his own traveling case. So I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene, the inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45. So I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set my little candle trick. I arranged it so that the firecracker would go off with a bang about 15 minutes later. So it's a coincidence that Van Zeek happened to walk in right at that time. That wasn't even planned. Okay? I guess I was right to say that's a ridiculous thing to plan, but it turned out to be a ridiculous coincidence instead. So that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagine it was a bag of fish and chips. Ah. I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back in his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seemed the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sort of details of what I did. And thanks, Miss Gory, for noticing that. We're definitely not done yet, though. We better not be done yet. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. Exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassination exchange? You have nothing left to lose now, Jigoku. Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us is admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. This can't be it. Sashiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found. I thought I wasn't supposed to be tried until the coming days. That doesn't make any sense. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. What? Weeks ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries as a prosecutor. As you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant Barack Van Zieks.
Objection!
Here we go. Kazuma. The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Here we go! Thank you, Kazuma. Counsel. The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all. And therefore, it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, he was taking orders from somebody! Barack Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Osogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Seishiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot. Into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France, having been offered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly, that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barack Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. Screams what? Order! The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps. But I am Kazuma Sogi, and I'm going to convince everybody of this completely wrong conclusion. It's like, I can do it even if the police can't, but then he's also wrong. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself. Which means, we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is, the prosecution's intention here. I must say, I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it. Whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well, as a big mistake on my part, I'm going to let you do this. Whilst it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. the defendant will disclose any and all involvement he had with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. So I'm just gonna drink it all away. Lord Van Zeeks. I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time I've endured the weight of implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let's justice decide, Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself, but I knew it would be like this, and I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise, as a lawyer and as his friend. Then that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Why no objection for a different reason? Very well, defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. As you wish, my lord. I have never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Why did you just bring up Dr. Wilson? I mean, there definitely is a common thread between you, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. You were the prosecutor on that case. So that's wrong. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the Assassin Exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution. Why did you bring up Dr. Wilson? Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey, and that you masterminded the Assassin Exchange. I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that is a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryonosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? I desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty? For all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. Weasel words. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. They were supposed to not point it out?
Hold it!
So you're not what the general public refer to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey? Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment that the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realize that. It's hard to prove a negative, though. If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though? That one by one, defendants who've been acquitted after your unsuccessful prosecution were killed. Let me answer that question by posing another. If one by one, defendants who've been acquitted after your successful defense were killed, would you find that disturbing? Disturbing? I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel with a one-word answer like that. Exactly. Well, that told me. But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement.
Hold it!
You say for years. How long exactly? 10 years, of course, since the very first time the Reaper's influence was felt in this courtroom. 10 years ago now. And your investigation led you somehow to Inspector Gregson, you're saying? I didn't want to believe it. He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past. A friend, even. It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at the yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found his secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learnt of the location he'd noted only as Grouse, and the appointment at 5 p.m. on the 31st, though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time. So now we're at the nub of the matter. As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate.
Hold it!
But why did you go to that specific location? I thought that if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the inspector's corpse. Yes, even though it wasn't designed for you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku. Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Hugh Boone, but unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first. Ha, you ridiculously careless blunder. A ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma. I mean, if you are the Reaper, yeah, you would know not to, well, whatever. Think what you will, it doesn't change the truth. This is the weird one.
Hold it!
There is a link between you and Gregson, though. Of course, we were close acquaintances. We worked on numerous cases together. I considered the man to be a mentor of sorts. He taught me a number of important lessons. He did? Such as what? Where to buy good fish and chips, and such like. Well, that was convincing. Dr. Wilson was a coroner, of course, but that was some time in the past. And in any case, I understand it was several years ago now that he was invited to work as at Japanese University. That's right. He was a visiting professor at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo. It should be unambiguously clear then that no link exists between myself and him. In other words, I had no motive for sending some assassin across the oceans to kill the man. Okay, that makes sense. Sounds plausible enough, and I want to believe it, but something about this just doesn't quite sit right with me. Okay, so that's the statement you have to contradict then. is that, so I was right on which statement you need to contradict.
Hold it!
Certainly, as it stands, there's no evidence to suggest that you concocted this
Objection.
scheme. But as it stands, we have only the accused insistence of his innocence. Where's your arguments, Kazuma? Sorry, perhaps there is some reason that would explain why he masterminded the assassin exchange. And if that reason could be established later in these proceedings, this reason I don't know, but it might come miraculously to me out of the ceiling, then the accused claim in this testimony that he wasn't involved with would account to perjury. Well, yes, that's hypothetically true, but clearly Kazuma-sama intends to identify a reason and use it to make his case. He just doesn't have it. So if we don't testify, I don't identify something first, he'll gain the advantage. So just take him down before he gets taken down. Great. This could be dangerous. This is silly. Okay. A convincing testimony by Lord Van Zieks. Certainly, with no apparent connection between the three men, there's no way to establish a motive. The testimony seems unassailable as far as I can see. Oh dear me, what's a bleak expression? I agree, there doesn't appear to be any particular link between them, at first glance, but with the inclusion of one other person. I must be overthinking it, surely? Another person, Mr. Naruhodo? I need to think back over all the information we've gleaned so far. Alright, and I'll review my notes about the case and all the evidence in the court record. Could it be that Lord Van Zieks has something to hide after all? Okay, so one other person. So, Gregson, John H. Wilson, Van Ziek. Who's the fourth one? I might want to stop recording. I feel like I should stop recording here and come back right here next recording. That would be a good idea. So I think a little bit about who is the fourth person. So the Red-Headed League has nothing to do with it. Mr. Vigil. You want Gregson? So the people that were there to do the autopsy were Wilson. Gregson wasn't there personally though, so does not nothing know. Miko Toba and Governor Caden. It's Miko Toba, that person. So we have Vigil, Miko Toba, Mr. Vigil, Mrs. Vigil, the gun, policeman minifigure, What was in Clint's stomach? Clint's stomach. gonna risk a game over with this, but it's either the autopsy report of Clint or the photograph of Clint. It's one or the other. And I have no reason to believe it's the reason why, like, the autopsy report has Gregson's name and John's name and Clint's name in it. 80% both, one after the other. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for this photograph. And if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Objection!
Wait. Pain. Fine. Oh, I have to wait for this to, like, scroll out. I don't care about it, though. I don't care about what you had to say, Strongheart. We should be able to skip over this. Even though it makes no sense in this context. It made no sense in this context. Okay. Yes. Okay, I'm trying to try to present the autopsy report. Clint's, that is.
Objection!
Yeah, it's always the second one you try. Okay. What is this, an autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old, from the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I mean, in hindsight, that was the better of the two. I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in the court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report to your counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an undeniable link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again, the professor. I've personally researched all the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone employed the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly written on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. He ate something? Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zieks to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. Marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death? That's outrageous! No, it's not. I thought this was going to be true, so... No, this makes sense. And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and it needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? I think Kazuma's half right. I think it may have been fabricated. But Van Zieks didn't know. But someone did know. It wasn't Van Zieks. So Kazuma's close. Someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Order at once. 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore by myself that I'd prove it, which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to squash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence. And he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There is a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What a secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my stupid supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's industrious sword, Kuruma, before the inspector's eyes. And he very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're the Asogi's young lad, are you? And what, you're gonna cut me down with that thing? Is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into that, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So you admit it then. The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated. It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak. I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it? That's right. Even then... That's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama, if the result of Clint Van Ziek's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barack Von Zieks. That orange text. It wasn't Van Zieks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. And as was established earlier, It has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barack Van Zieks. I'm ready to do it.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court. Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? What? Lord Van Zieks. I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. Lord Van Zieks isn't the one behind all this. Then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is, too. You? I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. That's meta. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... And I happen to have 5 lives now instead of 1. If I just would have made 1 fewer mistakes, so I could do this at a 1 life moment. There's no way this is wrong. If this is wrong, I'm gonna be like so disappointed.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it did. Lord Strongheart is like, oh, it's over, okay, Van Zieks is guilty. Court's adjourned. Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendants handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zieks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zieks, 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded with for the control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all that evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now, I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart! Everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. Ford awaits your response, my lord. We need Kazuma to join in. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? I don't have to, I'm the judge, dude. You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. That's utterly untrue.
Objection.
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. Yeah, but you don't have a recording of it. They hadn't invented that yet. You have no testimony from him. He's dead. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now. Unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say, we're gonna summon a ghost to the stand? I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. I mean, it's a good point. He's a villain, but he's got a point. Order in the court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and in the light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there is really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that the real purpose of the assassination exchange. There is one person who can. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections? We object. There is somebody who can testify, and his name is Eugene Mikotoba. And Courtney Scythe. She could too, but we're probably gonna call Mikotoba in instead of Scythe. We could call either in. We could drag her out of prison. We have them both testify. Kazuma, he's more or less waiting his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down and pursue the truth of what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. There is someone. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. He went so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Strongheart. Albert's gonna sweep Dr. Scythe under the rug. This guy, she won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope. Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about the autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who, Ryanosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks is this guy. Heaven help us. Another Japanese. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Eugene Mikotoba. 16 years ago. I just why would this guy let this guy testify? Why would, Strongheart is the judge. He could just end it. There's gonna be so much convenience going on here. He came to London with Seishiro Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student. And what could this testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroners merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What? Well, Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes? So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence. That's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities. But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. Arg. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi. Then this is when a Machina shows up. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. The court is... Who is it? Mr. Sholmes? Yep. Mr. Sholmes? There's no place for amateur detection, There's no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once. Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Male Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. I know where he's going with this. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellow, should the trial end at this juncture? Right. After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along with the prevarications of your superiors? Yep, I knew that's where he was going. Order in court! It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices. A door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. And for you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors of the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence. He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present who can honestly say... What's... The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right, we need to clear this up before that young Japanese... toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. Testify! Testify! Well, my lord, you hear the voice of the British Justice. Of British Justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward. Will it be rather awkward to silence? But he has no choice, really. The court will recess briefly, while I cover up my stuff. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess will be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What, Professor Mikotoba's here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, yes? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards, and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Like the double name pun, Male Strong Heart. Five health, but 6 mistakes. So close. And that will be it for this recording. I will finish the whole game in the next recording. Not that I have any knowledge of how long it'll take after this. It's just like, when you're at this point of the story, you're gonna have to finish it in the next recording. It's gonna have to end. So I will finish the game in the next recording. That'll mean it'll probably be 3 more videos in the playlist. Right, okay.